I'm Dr. Fiona Lovely, and this is the Not Your Mother's Menopause podcast. I'm taking the taboos of menopause and peri-menopause and bringing light to the dark. No bullshit, no shame. It's time for us to gain a new paradigm in female health, out with the old and in with the new, and I'm bringing fresh perspectives from someone in the arena. I've been practicing women's health for nearly 20 years, and I'm spilling the tea on what it means to live at midlife, knowing that the best is yet to come. I'm sharing my Gen X approach to living through this transition. Sassy, a bit sweary, and always honest. Tactical tips and instantly usable information is my aim. I hope to make you laugh and that you learn something new that helps you embrace the change. Together, we bring power to the peri. Onward to the podcast. You're tuned into the Not Your Mother's Menopause podcast. I'm Dr. Fiona Lovely. And before we dive into today's episode, I want to give a quick shout out to everyone who's been signing up for the Fiona's Friday Favorites newsletter. It is my bi-weekly newsletter where I share all the goodies, what I'm reading, what I'm recommending, what I'm nerding out on in the world of women's health and menopause. If you're not on the list yet, head over to drlovely.com, get yourself signed up. It lands in your inbox every other Friday, and I promise it's worth your time. Now, today's guest is someone whose work I think is this community, my people. We are really going to appreciate her. Meghan Rabbitt is an award-winning journalist who specializes in writing about women's health and wellness. Her work has appeared in some of the most respected publications out there: Women's Health, Oprah Daily, Prevention, and Maria Shriver's Sunday Paper, among many others. She is known for doing something that is genuinely rare and valuable, taking complex medical and scientific topics and translating them into clear, actionable information that actually helps women understand their bodies, their health, and ourselves. Meghan has just released The New Rules of Women's Health, Your Guide to Thriving at Every Age, published through Maria Shriver's Open Field imprint with a foreword by Maria herself. Now, as Meghan talks about at the beginning of this interview, Maria Shriver commissioned her to write this book. She's also been featured on NPR Life Kit, and this book draws on cutting-edge women-centered research and insights from over 130 of the world's top female health experts, covering the full arc of women's health, from menstrual and hormonal health to fertility to menopause, chronic pain, and beyond. It's already received praise from some of my favorite voices in this space, including the incredible Dr. Lisa Mosconi, whose work on the female brain has meant so much to so many of us. We talk about Dr. Mosconi's work and the work of others. Many of these beautiful women that have been interviewed for The New Rules of Women's Health, the book, have also been on the show. So I know I'm moving in the right direction. Now, the premise of this book, that the medical field has long ignored women's unique health needs, treating our bodies as if they were simply smaller versions of men's bodies, is something I talk about in my practice every single day. And we talk about it in this interview as well. And the fact that Meghan has pulled together this much needed research, this many expert voices, and distilled it into something women can actually use, that's a gift. I can't wait to hear what you think of this episode. Meghan Rabbitt, welcome to the Not Your Mother's Menopause podcast. I want to introduce AGZ from AG1, the nightly drink for winding down and resting up. It's a melatonin-free formula with clinically studied ingredients like valerian, ashwagandha, saffron, and magnesium L-threonate to support your body's natural sleep cycle. As you know, I've been using AG1 in my morning routine for years, and now AGZ is my evening game changer. I love the chocolate mint flavor, frothed with cold almond milk and loaded up with ice. I sip it while I'm journaling, reading, meditating, or stretching, whatever thing I choose for my nightly sleep hygiene. It's the perfect signal to my brain to slow down. If you're ready to turn down the stress and focus on the rest, head to the link in the show notes. drinkag1.com/Fiona Lovely. Again, this link will be in the show notes. You'll get a free frother with your first purchase of AGZ. I love it. Welcome to the Not Your Mother's Menopause podcast. I'm Dr. Fiona Lovely, and today I have journalist, author, writer, and editor Meghan Rabbitt with me. Welcome to the show, Meghan.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here.
Yes, well, me too. I tell you, this book that you have written, The New Rules of Women's Health, the foreword by none other than Maria Shriver, by the way. Hello. She's awesome.
She's awesome.
Yeah, you're going to have to give us a little insight into her. But anyways, thank you for writing this beautiful book.
Well, thank you for having me here to talk about it. So Maria Shriver wrote the foreword, but she actually is why I wrote the book. So she essentially commissioned me to write this book for her imprint at Penguin Random House.
Yes.
And we were out
Which
in
is
LA.
called Open Field, yes.
The Open Field,
Yes,
yep, exactly. And yeah, I was out in LA. I work for her weekly digital news magazine, the Sunday paper. I was out in LA in her offices there, brainstorming ideas. And I've been a health journalist my entire career. And she said, Meghan, we haven't really had a really great women's health book since Our Bodies Ourselves. And I said, you're so right. But then we kept talking. And I said, the thing is about Our Bodies Ourselves, is a remarkable resource for women, but it really focuses on what we now refer to as bikini medicine. It's our breast health, our reproductive health, our sexual health, all really, really important aspects of our health. But now we know more about the differences between men and women and why women's brains are more vulnerable to Alzheimer's disease, why heart attack symptoms show up differently in women. And so the more I talked to Maria about this, the more I was like, gosh, we need a really comprehensive book. And Maria said, I want you to write a manifesto. And so hence why, this book has got some heft to her.
Yes, she does. She sure does. What a beautiful thing. Well, first, tell us, how did you find yourself as a health journalist?
Yeah. So when I was little, I wanted to be a doctor. Interestingly enough, I just think I always loved learning about human health and bodies and how we work. And then I hit like really hardcore biology classes and chemistry and was like, uh-oh, I don't think this is my path. And so I always was a reader and a writer. Writing was always how I really processed the world. And so I became an English major, and first semester freshman year really lucked out with an advisor who tossed me into a journalism class and recommended that I take a journalism class, and I fell in love with it right away. And so I really quickly dialed into I wanted to be a magazine journalist and work in magazines, not hard news, because I was more interested in feature length writing, and really got lucky and got my first job at Parenting Magazine in New York City in 2001. That was my first job, and just ended up really writing a lot at age 20 nothing about pregnancy and childbirth and becoming a mother. And so that really launched me into a path of really focusing on health and wellness in my career.
Amazing. Similarly, I found myself talking to women about menopause when I was 31, 32. So long before I had the experience of it, I was talking about it from an academic point of view. So same kind of thing. I can relate. And didn't you find for yourself that now you've been through some life stages that writing about women's health has changed for you?
Absolutely. Even over the course of writing this book, my own, I really dug in to start writing this book in my early 40s and was having some symptoms that I ignored. So I write about this in the introduction to my book. Even as a health journalist, I feel like I didn't get an adequate training, or I didn't have an adequate knowledge about various aspects of my health, including the menstrual cycle. And I just sort of assumed that since my period was happening every 28 days, I was normal. And I would brag about that. And even to my doctors, I was like, look at me, every 28 days, I'm good. Meanwhile, I was hemorrhaging on day one, day two, like crime scene periods, as I've heard them refer to. I would joke about my hemorrhaging every month, but just just didn't bring it up because I didn't know to. And then over the course of reporting this book, and as I, made my way further into the menopause transition, I was like, oh, I think I really need to bring this up. Like, I think it's not normal that I'm rolling over in bed and risk getting dizzy because I
Mm-mm.
was anemic because I was losing so much blood. And finally, it was a combination, I think, of really talking about my symptoms in a new way because I had more knowledge, but also a really thoughtful nurse practitioner who asked me really great questions in the doctor's, in that clinician's visit, that it turns out I had a uterus full of fibroids and ended up with a hysterectomy. So yeah, my
Oh.
health has changed and evolved as all of our health does, right? And really what became a North Star as I was reporting and writing this book
Mhm.
is like knowledge is not only power, but it's a sense of empowerment. It gives us this feeling of, wait a second, you doctor may know bodies, but I know my body, and I'm going to
Yes.
share with you what my experience is so we can make a shared decision here.
I love this. This is a beautiful place for this book to have been born from because you've had your own experience of, there's a lot of words I can throw in here, but basically having the symptoms of your perimenopause be normalized and therefore not treated, right? At some point. And then a nurse practitioner stepped in and said, let me ask you some different questions.
But you know what I would add to that, and what's become
Please.
really clear to me is that I was also dismissing my own symptoms. Yeah, and I think a lot of us can do that. I
Oh,
am a type A overachiever, oldest daughter, and I think I was over
me
identifying.
too.
Okay, so I think so many women can relate to this no matter what your birth order is, but it's like
Mhm.
you're a go-getter, you're a straight A student, you want the gold star, perhaps even at your doctor's visit. And I think it's really important for us to unwind from that and be like, wait a second, like my doctor, whomever my clinician is who's taking care of me, has seen everything, is not going to give me a gold star for my supposed look at my body doing all the right things, And we have to, first of all, know enough and be educated enough to know when to raise a red flag about something or talk about symptoms in more nuanced ways. But also, I think be brave enough to say, hey, I'm dealing with this and it's normal for me, but is it normal? Should I be losing this much blood? Should I
Mhm.
be experiencing this symptom? So yeah, I think that was a big aha for me where it's just like, ugh, like I was not only going to different doctor's visits and not having the right questions asked,
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
think I was also dismissing my own symptoms.
Well, I think in a way we were taught to do that as the culture, right? We were
Totally.
taught to just mm, take care of others before we take care of ourselves or
Yeah.
don't. But also, don't look too hard, otherwise the wheels are going to come off, right? That's another thing we're taught. I've had women say to me, and this is something that just I thought of this while you were talking, is they'll say, "Well, I don't want to bother my doctor." What? I don't, wait a minute. That's what we're here for.
Totally. Oh my gosh, I talked to a woman who said, I don't want to ask for certain testing because I'm afraid it'll come back normal. And I'll seem like too much because I'm asking.
God,
Right? And
so
but
much baggage.
but so much baggage, but I think it's so important that we're talking about this
Yes.
because that is another big learning after interviewing 132 experts for this book. It's like, no, 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 we've seen everything. We want you to tell us your lived experience so that we can have a real conversation. And I think anybody listening who's like cringing, like, oh God, that's been me or it is me, don't beat yourself up. You are normal. You are not alone. And now that you have awareness, okay, what can we be doing
Yeah.
differently to get better care?
It may be normal, but it can also be managed. And that's
Yeah.
okay. We
Yeah.
deserve that for sure.
Mm.
Okay, so 132 experts for this amazing book. Let's talk about the experts for a moment. What was the thing that they left you with that shocked you? What was the thing that surprised you the most?
There were shocks in every single chapter. So this book goes through, what we bikini medicine. It goes
Mhm.
through, it starts with anatomy because we're not taught about this. So in the anatomy chapter, I spoke to this um, you know, there's a group of largely female anatomists who are all really pushing for us to use anatomical terms that are not named after the usually men who laid claim to these body parts. So, for example, fallopian tubes. Did you know they are called such because an old Italian priest whose last name was Falloppio essentially said, and these going forward will be called the fallopian tubes.
I did not know
I
that.
didn't either. And what this group of anatomists are saying is no, that's an anatomical eponym named after, again, usually a white man who
Yeah.
laid claim to the body part.
Yep.
Let's use, it's not really an anatomical toponym, but you can think of it like a toponym in terms of they should be called uterine tubes because they come from the uterus. And the beauty of this is it not only unwinds us from this old sexist, history,
Yeah.
but it also actually helps cut down on cognitive load for medical school students and healthcare practitioners who are learning anatomy. So it helps us. So that's a very obvious example. Most of us know where our fallopian tubes are, but there's numerous examples of this throughout the body. And so that was a shocker to me.
Uterine tubes. Yeah.
And so I call them uterine tubes now, and I get like eyebrows raised and people are like,
Bet you do.
"What?" But it's kind of cool because it launches me into that conversation. And then
Yeah.
most women are like, "Oh, cool. Like from here forth they will be uterine tubes to me too." So that was a big shocker. And again, at every
Mm.
chapter, there's just surprises. A big one, there's a breast health chapter I'm really proud of because I think so many of us worry, rightfully so, about breast cancer. 1 in 8 of us will have a
Mhm.
diagnosis.
Mhm.
But too many doctors are not calculating our lifetime risk of breast cancer. Has a doctor
Say
ever
more.
talked to you about your lifetime risk of breast cancer?
No.
Most women I ask say no. And we make it to midlife. And here we are getting our annual mammogram at age 40. And we think we're on it when it comes to breast cancer prevention. And really, what Dr. Lisa Larkin told me when I interviewed her, she's actually a breast cancer survivor herself, as well as
Mhm.
a genius women's health practitioner. But she said, we should be doing what's called a lifetime risk assessment. So there's a couple models online. Tyre Cuzick is one of them. And what you can do right now, actually press pause and go to the Tyre
Yep.
Cuzick breast cancer, a lifetime risk assessment of breast cancer. It'll pop up right away. It's a simple questionnaire. And what it does is it spits out a score, a percentage, that tells you what your lifetime risk of breast cancer is. Anything over 20% is considered high and should qualify you for a breast MRI in addition to a mammogram. I had never had a doctor talk to me about my lifetime risk of breast cancer. I did the score myself. It was very close to 20%. It was just under 20%. And then I brought it to my doctor and my gynecologist, and we had this amazing conversation because he was like, I'm glad you did this. Let's do it again together. Make sure you got the right score. And then when it came out to like 18%, he said, yeah, that combined with your extremely dense breast tissue, I want you to
Mhm.
get your first breast MRI. So that's just like shocker. How did I make it to age 45 with nobody talking to me about that? And
Yeah.
so my hope is that women, when they pick up this book, you'll be surprised throughout with like, gosh, some of the stuff will feel like a refresher, like, okay, I've read that or I knew that. And I think other information will just feel like, whoa, I had no idea. I need to talk to my doctor about this.
Yes, absolutely. And the whole show, the whole premise of the show has been education so we can advocate for
Bingo.
ourselves, advocate for others, people in our families, our communities, whatever. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, we can sometimes advocate for ourselves, sometimes not. And so when we have these conversations, Megan, of course, exactly as you said, now I can feel the women listening going, "Oh my God, I'm going to go. What did she say that was? Tyre Cusick? How do you spell
Ty
that?"
Exactly. Yeah. Tyrecu. Gosh, it's either SICK. Fact
Yes,
check
I.
me on that, but put
Okay,
it in the show notes. It's
I
like a,
will.
a very easy link. Another thing that surprises so many women I talk to, and as I've been out in the world talking about my book, which is something we all should know, which is that pregnancy complications, even if they clear up after you've had your baby, can put you at increased risk for heart disease later on. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if you've had preeclampsia or gestational diabetes, this is not something to beat yourself up about or worry about. It's just something that should be part of your conversation with your doctor to say, look, should I be getting some preventive heart health care? Should I see a cardiologist maybe earlier than I might otherwise? Similarly, a history of hot flashes in the menopause transition.
Mm-hmm.
Severe hot flashes can increase your risk of heart disease later on, of heart attack and other heart symptoms. And again, it's not, I don't share this to scare people, but knowledge is power. When we know
Yes.
this, we can say, hey, I read this or I heard this on a podcast. Can we
Mhm.
have a conversation about this? And it feels so empowering, right? You're going to leave that doctor's visit being like, go me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, let's talk about the cardiac thing. I was going to bring that up with you actually, because I was hoping when you interviewed Dr. Jane Morgan, who she's been on the show, isn't she fab?
So
She's
great.
awesome.
So
And
great.
the thing that sticks out to me most from when I interviewed her, which was about 18 months ago now, she said, your pregnancy is your first heart stress test.
I love that she said that.
Right?
Pregnancy is the heart's first stress test.
Stress
Yep.
test, exactly. And to me, that is so much power in there. Like you said, I know I have a family history of heart disease, so I've got a laser focus on that to make sure that I'm watching everything that I can. But of course, you and I both know that heart disease is the number one killer of women, but we don't hear enough about it. And of course, we don't, as women, we present very differently than men present with a heart attack.
Yeah, and another big shocker to me, and it was really sad when I was interviewing preventive cardiologists for my book, including Dr. Morgan, is that what they're all concerned about is that our awareness, our collective awareness that heart disease is the number one killer of women is going down. So it's actually worse than it's ever been. So it's like heart disease isn't even really on our radar when that should be like very much on our radar starting at earlier ages than we think. We just think heart attack later. It's a later problem, right?
Why do you think it's going down? Why is our awareness going down?
I've thought about this and I actually think the media has a lot to do with it. I'll blame myself. I don't think we're covering heart disease in ways that we need to be.
Mhm.
I think in general too, we just hear more women talking about breast cancer or their fear of breast cancer or their sisters, best friend getting diagnosed with breast cancer. That feels scarier to us. And I also think there's just a way in which heart disease is depicted still as a man's problem, you know? And sure enough, men do disproportionately suffer from heart disease at younger ages. But then when women after menopause,
Yes.
our risk skyrockets. And I think another reason we're really just starting to understand, thanks to sex specific research, all the ways, estrogen and its decline actually impact the heart and what we
Yes.
might be able to do about that.
Well, and I think it's important that we talk about that very thing that if you choose to do HRT, understand that when you're adding estrogen back into the system, you are protecting the heart. We don't tend to think of it that way. We tend to think of it like, I got to get rid of these hot flashes. I need to sleep better. And those things are very true for sure. But I know I do this with my own patients is it's not just about the vaginal dryness.
Yeah.
It's about protecting your bones, your brain, your heart for life. That's why we want to look at the HRT and say, does it make sense for you to do it? Do you wish to have the experience of that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the big takeaway for me is I just turned 47. And for the last few years, I've had conversations with my doctor about my heart health in ways that I never would have before. It's just now officially, okay, it's on my radar beyond just cholesterol. That's the other big, interesting, like, point is that I learned, and that is in the heart health chapter of my book, is that women actually are much more hesitant than our male counterparts to take a statin or a cholesterol lowering medication. We don't think we need it. Again, I think it's tied to the fact that we don't think we're at risk of heart disease. Like
Mm.
our fear about heart disease doesn't really exist, and so we're more hesitant to take that cholesterol lowering medication. And it's just like they are proven medications, like they are very well tolerated is the overwhelming body of research shows.
Mhm.
And so I think that's really important, and that's a personal change I made. I was one of the people. I also have heart disease all over my family,
Mhm.
and I was like, I exercise, I eat well. I'm going to put off, yeah, you prescribed me this low dose of a statin, but I don't want to
Mhm.
take it. And then after interviewing all the cardiologists I interviewed, I started
Yeah,
taking a statin
I bet you did.
because it's just doesn't make sense not to,
Yeah,
and I just had my first the coronary artery score
that's
to
good.
just
Yeah,
get a
yeah.
baseline, and
Yes.
so I think, yeah, and switching over to brain health, which I know you're
Yes.
passionate about,
Yes.
that's another thing that women in midlife, we need to be thinking about our brain health. Again, I fear it's something we just think we worry is going to happen down the road. But what we know now for sure is that changes we make now in midlife can go a long way to protecting our brain health later on.
Absolutely. And the switch for Alzheimer's or dementia or any of the dementias is actually occurring back in the 40s, right? So we need to be paying better attention. I had a 31-year-old female on my Cairo table yesterday, and I was talking to her about brain health and exercise in particular for brain health. And she's like, I'm too young to worry about that. No, you're not. Now's
No.
the time. And I think that's the beauty of conversations like we're having is that it's reaching younger and younger women, which is really important.
Yeah, and empowering younger women to say, wow, like even before I hit midlife, though I would really say like midlife is anywhere really in your 30s, you can start
Yeah.
thinking about this, certainly your 40s and 50s and 60s. Like these are changes we make now to optimize our health, pay off later.
Mhm.
This is the changes you make in midlife are what's going to prevent you from having to see an endless list of specialists later on because you can actually make
Yeah.
changes now. If they catch my high cholesterol now, it
Mhm.
means that we can handle it so that I'm not having a heart event
Yes.
ideally in my 70s, And
Yes.
so I think it's really empowering to think, "Oh, okay, cool." Like but it's also hard because in midlife we are oftentimes taking care of kids. We're taking care of aging parents.
Parents.
We're
Yep.
at the peak of our career, so we are
Mhm.
hard charging and we can very easily forget about ourselves and our own health. And in fact, many clinicians I interviewed for this book said we are failing women in midlife, actually. We're talking a lot about menopause, but we're failing women because women, we lose touch points with our doctors in midlife. In our reproductive years, it's annual gyno appointments. And during pregnancy, it's many, many more than annual appointments, right? And we've got all these touch points. And then later on, we see all the specialists. But like, gosh, we have to stay on it with those, annual gynecology appointments, with annual primary care visits, with specialist visits as it comes up.
And we have the menopause transition itself, the loss of estrogen for women, as we've just talked about, turns on a great deal of the chronic disease risk, right? So this is I get what the doctors are saying. It's that we're not checking in and making sure, like if a woman has been healthy, you've seen the same doctor for 10 years or some such thing. A woman's been healthy, the doctor's not necessarily thinking, well, let's just make sure let's do a hormone check. Let's see where they are. Let's take a look at your cholesterol. The things that thyroid, let's see what your thyroid's up to. Do you have any inflammation in the body? That's the kind of thing we should be looking at. So I'm glad to hear that there is some awareness of that.
Yeah, and even things like, skin exams. Like these are just basic care that we can just put off because we don't think it's necessary. One of my dear friends actually just was diagnosed with basal cell carcinoma.
Wow,
She had a
yeah.
spot that was skin colored, didn't think it was a big deal, and was really, really busy with, young kids. And so it's understandable why she wasn't able to get to the doctor. But like now is talk about a wake up call. Then there's a surgery that's involved. So the more
Yeah.
proactive we can be, the better.
I agree. And yes, absolutely. Okay, let's come back to something you said when we were talking about cardiac health. Men's bodies have been the research standard for the most of the last 50 years. So I'm curious. I am very interested in the research that's emerging now, and how it seems to be women doing research for women that's
Yeah.
actually moving the needle. So, what did you see and hear around this while you were writing the book?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. For far too long, our research was based on men and mostly white men. And that's so problematic for so many reasons because we're finally, starting to realize, take brain health, for example. For years, we just assumed that women disproportionately suffered from Alzheimer's disease because women lived longer. And that is turns out not to be the case. It turns out, estrogen plays a key role in the brain, and its decline when estrogen goes down, it significantly impacts the female brain in ways that could predispose you to Alzheimer's disease. So that is one example that we're finally starting to talk about. But again, it took women at the table of deciding what gets researched to say, hold up, I'm seeing something different in the clinic. Like, let's do a study, to figure this out. And so it's happening across the board, across specialties, thankfully. But I
Mhm.
really do think it is because women are finally starting to make those decisions. And it wasn't until I'm pretty sure it was 1993 that here in the US women were even required to be in studies. Like I was in
Mhm.
high school at that
Yep.
age. Like, I mean, that means my mother, talk about like not your mother's menopause. I mean,
Yeah.
she was totally out of luck when it
Yep.
came to any understanding, So she had doctors, well meaning doctors, just saying, I don't know,
Mhm.
as answers because they genuinely didn't. So
Mhm.
we have a big game of catch up to play.
Mhm.
Luckily, we have started to make some tracks, and that's what I aim to highlight in the book is where we have made those tracks, where what we have learned, so that at least you can say, okay, at least we know this much, and bring that information to your doctor and say, well, I know this is what the research says, how does it apply to me?
Yeah. Yeah. So much noise around HRT these days. Lots of opinions.
Yeah.
And this beautiful research we're talking about right now is showing us so clearly that keeping the hormones in a certain level actually gives us some health advantages that we maybe haven't accessed before, or maybe not in the way that we do it now. So, first of all, when it comes to HRT, what were the things that stood out for you as you were researching the book?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, we are starting to talk more about hormone therapy, right? I mean, one of the biggest things, which I know you have covered in many podcasts, is the Women's Health Initiative and the damage that that did for a whole generation of women. Like my mom was totally denied hormones, and now she has osteopenia. And I wonder what her fate would have been had she not been denied those hormones, right? And so thankfully we're starting to I think more women are more open to hormone therapy, but I think there's also just a lot of misinformation that gets put out around hormones. There's still a lot of confusion. The biggest takeaway for me is it points to we need to go to our doctors armed with information that's based on evidence so that we can then make the right hormone decision for us.
Mhm.
And so, I think staying open to hormone therapy is really important. One of the big like shockers for me is that actually, the estrogen you get in hormone therapy is much less than you got if you took the birth control pill.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think there's this misconception that you're just getting so many
Yeah.
hormones and
Yeah.
that it's just going to mess you up. And it's like, actually, if you were ever on the pill and you did fine, you got way more,
Yes,
you
way
know,
more.
way more than, right? But I think that's also interesting too, and something, you'll notice I'm saying hormone therapy.
Yeah.
I'm interviewing more and more doctors who are saying like, actually, we should probably get rid of the replacement in
Yep.
HRT because
Yep.
we're actually not trying to replace your hormones to
No.
what they were
Yeah.
in your reproductive years. And it's subtle, but I think
Mhm.
words matter. And the more we can start talking about it as menopause hormone therapy, which is just like we're just trying to supplement
Yeah.
what you've lost to give you some protective benefits.
Yes.
I think that's really important.
Well, and of course, the research refers to it as HT or MHT, right? Is what most women still know it as
Yes.
HRT for
Yes.
sure. And I think one of the things that I see as the biggest block as a non-prescriber of hormones, but very much pro menopause therapy using hormones, is that I may read the research. The research is out there. It's showing us that these things are safe, but the doctors are still saying no. And the doctors aren't reading the research. And it takes so long, it seems, from when the research gets released, published, to when it's actually working in the clinical setting. So, did you come across this at all while you were talking to the experts?
Yeah, and the experts I interviewed for my book are very much prescribing hormone therapy and believers, and even more so, they're trying to train other clinicians how
Right.
to prescribe hormones because they missed out on that in medical school. I mean, the statistics are pretty alarming when it comes to menopause training, even in medical school. I mean, I think it's something like only 8% of medical school residents felt
Oh,
adequately trained in one survey, felt adequately trained to treat menopause, women in menopause. And that's like, that's scary.
and we're talking about gynecologists, correct? Like
Oh, yeah.
actual specialties. Like,
Yeah.
how did we not see that, Megan?
Well, to be honest with you, I interviewed an incredible urologist for my book, Dr. Maria Uloko, who says gynecologists don't even get adequate training of the vulvar anatomy. Like, how's that for a shocker? These are specialists who, yeah, and there's research to back that up, and so I think really that's a red flag for me now. And what I talk to a lot of my friends who are we're all in the menopause transition, somewhere in that transition. If you're seeing a clinician who's just like, no, you should not be on hormones and doesn't even want to have the conversation with you, it's if at all possible, try to find a new clinician because I think thankfully we are starting to talk about hormones more, that's becoming more rare. But if it is
Mhm.
happening for you, like, no. The other thing too I think is really important is to educate yourself about the basics of hormone
Mhm.
therapy so
Mhm.
that you're not going into your gynecologist or your menopause specialist and saying like, tell me everything you know about hormones. It's like we have to do some research ourselves, study up on what the Women's Health Initiative got wrong and what we know now.
Mhm.
Understand what hormones are prescribed when it comes to menopause hormone therapy: estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Know what your potential options are. These are all things that we can do on our own before
Mhm.
that appointment that really do go a long way to maximizing our time with our clinician, because we're not going to get 2 hours unless we're in some kind of concierge model. You're
Mhm.
probably not going to get like 2 hours with your menopause specialist. You might get 20 minutes. And so
Yes,
you
if you're
really,
lucky.
if you're lucky, and
Yeah.
so you really have to go into that appointment with an agenda and to say,
Yeah.
look, here are my symptoms. Let's have the conversation about hormone therapy.
Yeah, and the thing, I love this. Absolutely. We must have that advocacy piece. However, there are women that are so in the weeds of their symptoms that what they will do is they will read what you and I put out there. They will listen to the podcast, they will read this beautiful book, and they won't remember what they read. And so, or they don't want to make a fuss with their doctor. I always think about those women, and I think,
Yeah.
gosh, we've got to do a better job as a community reaching out and making sure everybody gets the help they need. Or maybe they live in an area where there isn't access
Yeah,
to a
absolutely.
doctor, right?
Or maybe they're a woman of color who always feels dismissed at every doctor visit that she goes to. So I really did some thinking about this and tried to get real actionable advice in the reporting of my book. And there's a couple sections I'm really proud of, which is how to make the most of a doctor's visit, but
Mhm.
also like what we can do to tee ourselves up for the best possible experience. And one of those things, for that woman you just described who's dealing with a lot of symptoms and maybe feels terrible a lot of the time and reads a book like mine and says, okay, like that's interesting, just grab a notebook and
Mhm.
think of yourself as a health journalist in your own life, for your own life, not for all the magazines and or to write a book. For you become your own health journalist, and you're going to keep a reporter's notebook, and you're just going to keep a running list of the symptoms you're dealing with. And
Mhm.
then you're going to do what journalists do: a couple things. One, you're going to organize that list in order of priority when it comes to what symptoms are most impacting your quality of life. So let's say you've got a list of 10 symptoms, reorganize that list about like, oh, this one causes me the most pain or suffering,
Mhm.
etc. And you organize that list. And then when you go to your doctor, you're going to say something like this: I want to show you the list of the symptoms I'm dealing with right now, but I went ahead and organized that list in order of priority of what's bothering me the most. How does this look to you? And your doctor, it's just that's going to build a bridge between you and your
Mhm.
clinician. Your clinician's going to look at you and say, oh, this is great. Thank you so much for keeping track, but also, for letting me know that you realize I don't have 2 hours to go over everything. So, yeah, those are most important to you. They seem most, important to me too. And let's get you treatment. So
Mhm.
it just is
Beautiful.
this way where you're not, as journalists, we're taught don't bury the lead. And that's what a lot of doctors I interview say, gosh, the most important stuff often comes up as the patient's leaving the office.
Oh,
And that's something to really keep in mind. Our doctors have heard everything, they've seen everything. You can't really tell them anything that's going to shock them. Um, it's understandable as to why it might take a little time to warm up to say something that's really hard or maybe shameful or whatever. But gosh, if at all possible, just try to even just narrate your experience. Gosh, it feels really hard to say this, but I'm going to say it because it feels important. I'm dealing with fill in the blank. And
yes.
gosh, your doctor's really, that's how you're going to get the care you need.
You're so right. The building a bridge thing, I love this advice. A notebook, absolutely prioritize. I always say to the patients that ask me this very thing is no more than three things. Otherwise, you're going to get confused and your doctor's going to get swamped with the details and things will get missed. But I love the idea of saying, here, look at my list. Here it is.
Yeah, because what you think are the three most important, your
Yeah.
doctor might too. But if your doctor scans that list and is like, whoa, that thing you have at number nine is actually a big red flag for me,
Yeah.
like you're just, it's another way that you can be really proactive. And I think this is really important, not just if you're dealing with a whole bunch of symptoms, but even if you feel pretty okay. So I'll tell you personally, at 47, I'm sleeping well. I feel really good. I don't really
Mhm.
think I'm dealing with a lot of perimenopause symptoms outside of some rage. I will tell you, my moods are up and down, and the rage is real,
Oh,
huh? It's
oh, it
like,
is.
what is happening? Um,
Yes.
but what I'm doing is I'm keeping that reporter's notebook for my own health
Yeah.
because I'm like, you know what? What if I'm dealing with stuff that I'm brushing off as no big deal? But like when it comes time for my annual gynecologist visit with a menopause specialist, I can say, here's what's been happening. I feel pretty good, but here's what's been happening. It's like just, it's so important because we can so easily minimize what's happening in our own world.
Oh, it's a fantastic piece of advice, and I have somewhat of a practice around that myself, but I think I have to do a better job with that. So thank you for that little tip. That's awesome. We have a friend of the show. Her name is Andrea Donsky. She is a menopause researcher, educator, author, and she gathers data through her website where she has women fill out surveys. And probably, and she has published the results. She has white papers that she has published. And my favorite bit of her research is the 103 symptoms of menopause.
There are so many.
There's so many. And of course, what's of interest to me, and I've had her on the show several times to talk about this, is that in the top 10, first of all, hot flashes aren't even in the top 10. And most of them are brain based.
Like brain fog and
Yes.
this. Yep, yep.
Mood, rage, anxiety, memory shifts,
Yeah,
fatigue, concentration, focus. I mean, even loss of libido is a brain mechanism,
yeah,
right? I mean, there's
yeah.
lots of loops involved in that, but uh, we can refer to it. The only one that wasn't, from my opinion, as a brain expert, was joint pain. That was the only one
Ah,
that's in the top 10. But anyways, one of the things I really am curious about, Megan, is when you were compiling the data for this book, how much did you start to see that menopause is actually a neuroendocrine shift? It's a brain shift. We've been thinking ovaries all these years or something else, but actually, it's a brain thing. Let's talk about that, please.
yeah, I mean, thank God for Dr. Lisa Mosconi and her research in this area and her ability to write these beautiful books that help educate us about this, right? Yeah, we think about it as this um, you know, second puberty and it's just the hormonal changes happening and we just think about it all originating in our ovaries, whereas actually no, like it starts in the brain, right? And yeah, I mean, I think I'm hopeful that we're talking about this more and we're understanding this, right? And I think for a lot of women, it's like, okay, it starts in the ovaries, it starts in the brain. Let's just talk about the symptoms because that's what's really impacting me. But I do also think that when we know this, it can help it just again education is everything, right? It can help us say like, oh cool, all right,
Mhm.
so there, like Dr. Mosconi in pretty recent research found that the brain actually starts sprouting all of these new estrogen receptors just to sop up every last bit of estrogen our
Yep.
body is making during this. So it obviously points to how important estrogen is in the brain. And so
Mhm.
no wonder all of these symptoms are brain related as estrogen starts to decline and the brain is like, hello.
Hello. It's gasping for fuel is what it's
Yeah.
doing, of course, with the loss of estrogen. All of a sudden, its primary fuel source between glucose and estrogen, one of them's disappeared. Now we have to try to figure out a new way. And if we didn't know that, you'd be over there thinking that your rage was something to be concerned about, to be treated. I'd be over here back when I was experiencing this. I'm closer to the end of my perimenopause now, so I'm less so, but anxious as hell, not able to sleep, mood changes like that.
Yeah.
Think I'm over there going, do I need to be medicated? What's happening? Now I
Yeah.
understand because we have Mosconi's research.
Yeah, and we have, thank God, we have this collective ability to talk about it more. We're talking to our friends in ways that our moms never talked about that.
Absolutely.
And so I'm able to have, take a walk with my best friend and be like, "Ugh, I just don't feel like myself lately. It's weird. It's like everything's great." And I'm like, don't really feel like me. But then the next day I do. And it's like, my friend will be like, "Oh my God, me too." Or it looks like something else and it just normalizes it so that we don't
Mhm.
feel so alone in the process. Or, I really do think what happened too is like our moms had no clue what was happening. And so they were just like, yeah, lost. And then I think they downplayed things. I think they
Yep.
downplayed what they were actually going through.
Yeah.
Like my mom said to me, like, I think I was a little blue every so often. Meanwhile, I'm like, what does that mean? Like maybe she was really dealing with anxiety and some depression that was very much tied to those changes happening in her brain and she didn't know. So it's yeah. So we're making progress and I think we are, really teeing up the next generation to be in an even better spot than we are, which I think is great. And on this point of menopause and symptoms, I think it's really easy to focus on all of the negative
Mhm.
because I'll let you in on a little of the book writing process. So I wrote the menopause chapter. I was like, this is good. I'm psyched. I turned it in to my editors, who are younger. They're into their 30s, and one of my editors was like, it's really great. I learned a lot. Like, gosh, there's so many symptoms, and here's what to do about them. And wow, I had no idea about all this facts about menopause hormone therapy. But like, I'm a little bit like, uh-oh. And I was like, oh gosh, we're talking about all these important aspects of menopause because it's important to talk about how much it can suck, but how treatment is
Mhm.
available. But there are upsides. And so I started doing a little bit of more reporting on like, well, what are the benefits? And gosh, doctors had a lot to say about that. The brain
Yep.
actually gets this midlife upgrade. Yes, it's dealing with less estrogen and but it also is getting upgrades in ways that are really helping us. I think a lot of women can relate to, the menopause, their menopause years is like, oh, this is a new version of me, where I have come into my own. I have a clear understanding of what I want, my ability to get after what I want, less care about what other people think. As one Dr. Heather Bartos, who's an amazing menopause specialist in Texas, said, perimenopause is like this whitewater rapids. You're going up, you're going down. You're like, what's happening to me? Like, am I going to make it? And then you finish that whitewater rapid ride once you hit menopause, and it's like, oh, cool.
Smooth sailing.
You're smooth
Yeah.
sailing, and then
Yeah.
you're in this beautiful canyon and you're taking in the view, and it's really awesome. And I think that was a really important learning for me, and it really teed me up to have, I think, a better menopause transition because there's also a lot of things that I am really excited about and looking forward to, and that deserves
Yes.
airtime as
Yes.
well as the symptoms and the
Yes.
treatment for those symptoms.
Yes, absolutely. And you've touched on something that's really, really important to me in the show is to very much, as you said, let's talk about what happens on the other side of this. Because we have silenced the crone in our communities. Unfortunately, we have somehow said she's no longer potent for us, when as the rest of the world says, no, no, the wise woman is the one we make the oracle. So what are you guys doing over there? Anyways, it is absolutely true. As someone who is a little bit older than you, I will tell you that it's exactly as Dr. Heather described. Just all of a sudden, it just gets real quiet. And you're like, what do you mean there's not a new symptom today? I actually slept through the night. what's happening? My bladder's not irritated. My vagina's not dry. My mind is clear. Like, let's talk more about that. Years ago, I interviewed Dr. Luann Brizendine, who is a neuropsychiatrist, I believe. If you're not, you know who I'm talking about.
She's amazing. And actually, wasn't her book, one of her books is called The
The
Upgrade.
Upgrade.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Oh,
amazing.
fantastic. She was the first one. I was still in the mess, and she was the first one to say there's such goodness coming. Wait, it's coming.
Yeah.
Just know, trust your older sisters, it's coming. And
Yeah.
I love that message. It really needs far more airtime. You're right.
Yeah, because I fear that we're talking about it in negative ways so much that we might be scaring a younger generation out of menopause. And like, meanwhile, it's like menopause is gonna happen if you're lucky enough for it to happen, if you're lucky enough for you to live through it. And I think again too, it comes back to like, gosh, the menopause transition can also be fairly smooth for some people. Perimenopause isn't always, a crazy whitewater rapid ride. Like I've talked to friends who are like, gosh, like I think I made out pretty easy. And so I think it's just really important to stay open to whatever your experience is. Don't compare yourself to everybody else.
Mhm.
Keep a list of your symptoms so you can get treatment that exists for them and stay hopeful about what's to come.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, one last thing I want to ask you about for the book is to talk about women's chronic pain.
Oh,
Now, this has
loved diving
yes,
into the research on that. Yeah, go
go
on.
on.
No,
Well,
you.
yeah, I was just going to ask you. So, women are notoriously undertreated for chronic pain. And could it be the things that you've talked about? Are we dismissing it in ourselves? Are we saying, no, no, it's fine. I'll be fine. I can't really look at that because once I look at it, the wheels are going to come off. So I'm just not going to look at it. Because I think a lot of women do that. It's a coping strategy. But then again, we have a system that maybe isn't so great at recognizing when a woman has pain. Not to mention men's pain and women's pain is very different. So please tell me, what was your experience in researching that part of the book?
I think I got so excited when you brought that up because it's something not we're not talking about enough, and that's really a shame because it's a major problem. It's chronic pain. Gosh, for anyone who's been in chronic pain, it is so, I mean, it just impacts so many aspects of your life and your happiness and your ability to like have hope in the world. It's like so easy to catastrophize and think you're always going to be in pain, but you're nailing it. Honestly, it's like zooming up, some of my biggest takeaways is that as women, there is research to show that our pain is more likely to be dismissed than our male counterparts. We are less likely to be believed. We are more likely to be told it's all in your head, dismissed. We are much more likely to be dismissed. So, one very easy action step everyone should take on board, which a doctor told me, is that it's really important to not just use the pain number scale when it comes to my pain is like an 8 out of 10 right now.
Mhm.
That's not going to mean much to a doctor. If a man says that, maybe it will. But especially for women, it's like you need to say things like, the cramps I'm experiencing right now in my lower pelvic area rival the ones I dealt with giving birth.
Mm.
The pain I'm experiencing in my shoulder is reminding me of how painful it was when I blew out my ACL skiing. Those are just two examples. Like, be very specific and try to give a very specific example that a clinician might be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That helps the pain put it into context a little more.
So we get taught, I deal with a lot of pain in my practice, as you might imagine. We get taught what's called the visual analog scale, or the VAS, which is the 0 to 10, 0 being no pain, 10 being the worst pain you've ever been. So it's kind of a common language we all speak. But
Yep.
what you're just told me is that indeed, we become kind of numb to it because we see so many women that will say that their pain is a 7, 8, and 9 out of 10. And when I tell them 10 is like childbirth, and they go, well, yeah, okay, maybe it's like a 7. I'm still like, and you're walking around and nobody's
Yeah.
helping? Okay, let's get you some help.
Well, and your 7 might feel different than my 7, and how
Mhm.
can you tell, right? And so yeah, I think that's one thing. And then the other thing too, you called it. I interviewed Dr. Vonda Wright, who
Yeah.
is a menopause, maven and also an orthopedic surgeon. And so
Mhm.
she sees women and men in a lot of pain because she's about to operate on them for, major surgeries. And she said, Megan, it's not the men who are bragging about their high pain tolerance. It's
Oh,
the
yeah.
women.
Yeah.
Women come in wearing this badge of honor, like, I have such a high pain tolerance, like they want a medal for it. And it's like, that like, when you really tuck into the mechanics of pain and chronic pain and how there's you can think of it like a dial, and if pain is not treated, even just a little stimulus is going to feel more painful to you over time. So it is
Mhm.
really important that we treat pain. And when you're bragging about your high pain tolerance, your pain isn't going
Oof.
to get treated.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that is very important for women. It's
Ye-
like, no,
Yes.
stop doing that. Let's all collectively agree to stop bragging about our high pain tolerance.
Absolutely. Because what that means is that you've been exposed to such uncomfortable things in your life that you're used to it. That's not something to brag about. It really
No.
is not. She brought that. I interviewed her for the show when her book dropped last August, I believe it was, and I've forgotten she had actually said that to me on the show, but I it totally tracks. I've been in practice 21 years now, and in my 21st year, and she's right. The women are the ones that brag about having a high pain tolerance.
Yeah, and it's pervasive, right? Like I,
Yep.
I so I had a hysterectomy after I
Yeah.
finished my book. I had a hysterectomy because of that uterus full of fibroids that I finally had the diagnosis. And I think before reporting on the pain chapter for my book and
Mhm.
understanding how women experience pain and how we're I think I might have tried to push the pain med schedule my surgeon recommended. I might have tried to be like, oh, I don't need it. And instead it was like, no, I'm going to follow his
Yeah.
instructions to a T. I'm not going to try to super woman my way through this because my pain deserves to be treated. And also it deserves
Yes.
to like take the medication so that the pain doesn't ramp up and then you have to try to like come down off that pain. And so yeah.
My pain deserves to be treated. Like, uh, again, whoever is hearing Megan say that, that is true for you too. It's true for all of us. We have tools, we have people who can prescribe us tools for these things. Your pain deserves to be treated. That's a beautiful thing to say. Menopause skin. Nobody's favorite part of the transition at midlife we call perimenopause and menopause. If you're noticing fine lines, wrinkles, or sagging skin, maybe more texture during your menopause, I have some really exciting news for you. Menopause can deplete your skin's collagen, speeding up the aging. But here's the news. Vitali Skincare has built its entire line on the power of GHK-Cu copper peptides, a proven ingredient that signals your skin's stem cells to produce new and healthy collagen. My personal favorite, Vitali's Restorative Skin Cell Serum. I love how it rejuvenates and restores my skin from within, revealing a firmer, more radiant glow. Want to experience this transformation for yourself? Head to vitaliskincare.com and use the code LOVELY at checkout for 20% off. That's vitaliskincare.com, VITALI skin, SKINCARE.com, code LOVELY. Because with Vitali, youthful, vibrant skin is just a step away at any age. Okay, my listeners are action oriented. I have for years done episodes where I drop the data and then I give a list. Here's the things you can do right now. So, what are your favorite sort of 2 to 3 new rules for women's health that we can put into action right now, please?
Oh gosh, I mean, I could go on and on. I'll talk about some of the new rules I started following after working on this book. Number one is to really listen to my body in new and nuanced ways, and understand that whatever I'm feeling, does whether it's pain, whether it's rage, whether it's a hot flash, it deserves airtime with my people who I enlist to help me take care of me. I think some of the really actionable things that people can start right now. After interviewing 132 experts, I will tell you, if you are drinking wine to unwind at the end of the night, couple glasses, no big deal. 3 glasses a week for a woman is considered heavy drinking.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I one thing we can all do in midlife is really assess our relationship with alcohol and ask ourselves, like, why am I drinking? Am I, am I drinking to kind of numb out some emotions I don't want to feel? And then just know that if you are drinking alcohol, it's impacting your health in negative ways. Period. End of story. I think another big action step that in midlife we all really need to be listening to, which we're finally starting to talk about, is the importance of lifting weights. No longer is it cutting it for us to be like sweating it out on the elliptical machine, or just going for walks with friends. That's important. Do the movement. If you're moving your body in a joyful way, keep doing it. But if you can be lifting weights and ideally in a program that's helping you lift heavier and heavier weights over time safely, it's really going to do a lot when it comes to countering that dip in estrogen and protecting your bones and building muscle, which is metabolically active, So that's something a new rule I am following. I am lifting weights in a new way than I
Good
was
for you.
before. I would also say too, tied to the listening to your body, it's like be open to what your doctors are going to say then. I had a hysterectomy. It was something that I was really, really not wanting to do, and it turned out to be the right choice for me. But I think there's a way in which diagnoses or things that go quote unquote wrong with our health, it can feel like a betrayal of our bodies. And I think it's really important to reframe that, to say like, okay, like it's on my path, but let me stay open to listening to what's going on, and again, like getting the care I deserve. And then I suppose finally, it seems like most of your listeners are probably really open to menopause hormone therapy, HRT, but I think that's a big new rule. It's like, gosh, we gotta let go of that old thinking that it's going to cause breast cancer or heart disease, and really listen to the new research, which is that it's safe and effective for a lot of women. And it's really important to have a conversation to see if you're a candidate with your doctor.
Mm. And it's life changing when it's the right thing for you. So we must remember that, not just let's not forget about the benefits that come along with it, not just the risks, of which, when it's done correctly, turns out not that many risks involved with it. But again, it's how it's done.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to vaginal estrogen, which thankfully we were all talking
Yeah.
more about. But like, gosh, the number of women I talk to who are like, oh, I'm dealing with a UTI again. Or they tell me my
Yes.
mom's dealing with a UTI. And I point them to all this research that's just like, I know it might be hard to talk to your 75-year-old mother about vaginal
Vaginal
estrogen, but
estrogen.
like
Yeah.
talk to your 75-year-old mother about vaginal estrogen, and
Yes.
make sure her doctors are on board with that.
Yes. Dr. Rachel Rubin, I guess, fairly famously talks. Was she interviewed for the book? Was she one of
No,
the
she was
experts?
she was not one of the experts in the book, but her colleagues, Kelly Casperson,
Yeah.
Maria Uloko,
Yeah.
yeah, a bunch of her colleagues are in the book, and there's a section on vaginal estrogen. Yeah.
Yes, there has to be. Well, she very famously tells the story of when her mother was sick in the ICU. She had to show the nurses how to apply the vaginal estrogen because nobody had any idea how to help.
Yeah.
And I instantly thought of my own mother in dementia care and all of the other women that were in dementia care, and are in dementia care actively now around the world, that are having repeat UTIs, and it's an inexpensive solution that doesn't cause the urosepsis. Anyways, that's another conversation.
I love it. But one more thing
Yes,
that I
please.
just feel I have to add, because I just went
Please.
on a walk with a girlfriend yesterday who's just like, we started talking about vaginal estrogen. And I'm like, are you using it? And she's like, no, I know I should be, but it's so messy. And I'm like, okay, here's the secret. So for anybody listening
Yeah.
who's like, God, I got that too, but I never use it because it's so messy. Dr. Corinne Men did an
Yes.
amazing Instagram post on this. You put it on your finger and you put your finger into your vagina, and
Yes.
you don't forget the applicator,
Yep.
where you have to. So you just put it on your finger, you rub it on the anterior wall, that front side of your
Yep.
vagina, and then anything that's left on your finger, you smear it all over your vulva. You
Yeah.
do that, there's no mess.
No. No. No.
So
Absolutely.
hot tip for anybody listening who wants that action point. That's
I,
that's the solution.
I like that. Well, I think part of what's happening there is that the doctors and the pharmacists are not telling women how to do the application properly, or it's a guy that has no idea what it's like to have a vagina. He may have heard, etc. And then, of course, we get the whole, well, is a tablet better? Well, putting a dry tablet in a dry vagina doesn't make any sense to me. But to me, the cream is like, when you have a dry elbow or something, you get in there and you rub that where it needs to go, and it feels darn good.
Totally. And you're actually bringing up a great point, which is another surprise that I learned and a new rule, you could say. Your pharmacist is a wealth of knowledge.
Absolutely.
Don't just click no, I don't need any counseling. You can talk to a pharmacist about like even a question like that, especially if it's a woman. I'd say like, gosh, this is really messy. Any tips? Or, even things like I'm taking these supplements and now I'm prescribed this medication and I have questions about it. Like pharmacists go through so much school and they want to help us. So ask
Yes.
them questions. It's like free
Yes.
medical care right there in your pharmacy.
Absolutely. And that is one of those things I talk about with my community often, because we have sort of ignored the pharmacists for a long time, just said they're just the ones that are counting the pills.
Yeah.
No,
No.
they're, as you've just said, they have great training and they really want to be helpful. So I particularly love that. Also, if your vaginal cream is messy, maybe you need to focus a little more on the inside, which is what I think you have just said, and less sort of putting it on the outside of the vulva. So there you go. It's a
Love it.
little suggestion, but you've given us a play-by-play, shall we say. Okay, Meghan Rabbitt, author, journalist, fabulous female of this amazing book, The New Rules of Women's Health. Thank you for coming on the show and educating us, and thank you for writing this book.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and for, yeah, letting me talk about it. I'm really passionate about this. It's really, it was a labor of love. It took me 3 years, so much reporting and writing and researching and fact checking went into this really to just try to help women. That's my goal.
It shows. Where can people find out more about you and the book?
Yeah, you can learn more about the book and about me at newrulesofwomenshealth.com. And you can find me on Instagram at Megan Rabbit.
Fantastic. Thank you for dispensing the wisdom.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you
all
for,
you do.
oh, well, listen, I understand about a passion project. I accidentally became a menopause expert. So,
I
and
love it.
it's the love of my life, truly,
Yeah,
truly the
yeah.
love of my life. So I understand that passion. Okay, I have a final question I ask all the guests on the show that I'd love to ask you now if you're open to it.
I'm open.
Amazing. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell your younger self?
It's gonna get better and better and better. All the ways you're stressed out and worried and working so hard. Like, oh, just take a deep breath. You're perfect as you are.
Oh, I love it. That's going to free a lot of women. Meghan Rabbitt, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
The information and other content provided in this show, or in any linked materials, is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice, nor is the information a substitute for professional medical expertise or treatment. We are doctors, but we aren't your doctor. Seek your doctor's opinion. If you or any other person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical treatment. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have heard in this podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The opinions and views expressed on this page and in this show have no relation to those of any academic, hospital, health practice, or other institution. Thank you.